mix it with a little more force now. And this is the creaming, when you are giving a little force, making a little fluff. So if you are using a mixer, this would be like you can turn up the speed of your mixer, but you still want to do a couple minutes of mixing. With your arm, as I said previously, you can just keep mixing. If you're worried that it's not fluffy enough, just keep going. You won't hurt it by mixing extra. And I think this is going to take me probably 2 to 3 minutes to whip this into what I think is a fluffy texture. Also, since we are going to have a fair amount of mixing time right now, I'm just going to let people know that I am considering doing some stream videos of these so that people can ask questions. I'm going to see how this one goes, but I'm hoping to share some fun baking tips. I'm also going to get slowly more advanced things. There'll probably be one more cookie video of something like a sugar cookie or a gingerbread cookie, which will be very similar to the steps in this one, so I will fast forward stuff like this creaming process. But then people will have a recipe and a base for when I show off how to make and decorate with royal icing on cookies. I think that's a really fun thing for people to do. So that's one I want to focus on. It'll probably be broken up into multiple videos, like how to flood. Oh, okay, so fluffy, I'm going to add the eggs. First, crack them into a separate measuring cup. This ensures that you don't get the shell in your bowl, and even if you get a piece of shell, which looks like we didn't, perfect, it's a lot easier to get out of a separate cup than your entire bowl. Just like how we measured the salt. You can't get excess salt out of the flour when it's in the flour. So we're only going to do eggs one at a time. Put the other one at the side. And we're going to start with a push down motion again, so that, again, we don't make a mess. And once it's combined, we can do a bit more thorough of a mix. Continue scraping your sides to make sure everything is mixed evenly. And at this point, it should get a nice, smooth, even texture for the first egg. But once we start adding more of the wet, it will get a little bit kind of a lumpy looking texture. And that's just because of the amount of liquid to the amount of fat. Doesn't really match up. The fat can't fully incorporate. So right now it's smooth. Add our second egg. But once we add the dry ingredients, any lumpy texture from, like I said, the fat and liquid not fully combining, it's because the excess liquid is going to be absorbed by all of those dry ingredients and you will get it smooth again. So pushing down until we have that sort of combined, then scraping down and fully mixing it. There we go. Nice, even. Scraping all the way to the bottom there. Lovely. So like I said, this will start being a little bit textured. It's still pretty smooth. Once we add the vanilla and the color contrast, that's really going to show it. I'm adding 2 tablespoons of vanilla. That is a high quantity of vanilla for a cookie. I find that adding extra just really makes them more delicious though, so I always opt for that and eat the cost. You can fully do 1 tablespoon of vanilla instead. It'll still turn out awesome. So we're going to be doing the same thing, the push down so we don't splash all over the place, and then slowly start moving all the way through it. This one's going to be a lot easier and faster because it's starting to get nice and liquidy, so it's easy to mix. Just scrape all those sides, scrape down to the bottom, do a nice swish through the middle, and make sure it's all fully combined, just like that. And so you're going to see, like I said, a little bit of texture looking now. And we are going to bring over our dry ingredients again. Whichever mixing bowl is larger, you can use that one to mix in. It doesn't really matter because we're combining the full amounts. And as usual, we don't want a giant poof. If you, again, do have a mixer at this point, keep it on the lowest speed so that it doesn't poof the dry ingredients all into the air. So with our fork, that means nice and gentle, push down, little circles. And I am going to switch to my hands once we get this going, because they are one of your best tools and they're attached to you. Just make sure you keep that cleanliness buff on that we've got on the side there and that they're nice and washed. And they're great for this final process because then you can feel for any clumps that weren't mixed in, which the fork obviously you can't feel that you missed something. And for the final mix, you can scrape around the sides in a fuller fashion that the fork might not be the right shape to scrape the edge there. So it's time to put our hands in there, and this folding motion is exactly the same as while I was doing the push down. It's just a good way to start without making a mess. And then right at the end, we're gonna kind of twist our fingers through to get it through the middle. Also, this way mixes very gently so that you don't overmix, because as I mentioned before, once you get the flour into the mixture, you can overmix, which is activating the gluten and making a tougher texture for your dessert, which is not usually the idea for desserts. That's usually just the idea for breads. So we can flip this over so you can get any of that dustiness down at the bottom there. And now we're ready to add our white chocolate chips. So just clear your hand off a little bit so you can open your chippets. I'm going to try and pull it with the tab. And it just ripped off. I think I'm going to need to grab some scissors to open mine. Just give me 1 second. And now we've got ourselves some scissors. So if you are adding chips to your recipes, the regular size bag is 2 cups, so you don't have to measure anything. If you do get the jumbo bags, then you can measure them with your cup measures again, but I'm just going to pour my full bag in because it is the 2 cup size bag. And we're going to twist those through to make sure they're getting in all of the dough. If you just mix around the outside, they kind of just stick around the outside. So this is when you want to be twisting to get it through the middle. Just gently, and once it seems mixed, you don't want to overdo it again. So we'll just press that down. I think that's pretty evenly distributed. Your dough will look like that. And now we are ready to preheat our oven. So for this recipe, it's 350 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's what I'm preheating to. But as you get to know your oven better, your oven might heat hotter or cooler. Next, we're going to get our parchment paper and scoops and our spoon and our dough all ready. My parchment paper has some marks from the last batch. I just flipped it to reuse it. I have a purple scoop here and a regular tablespoon. So we're going to start with the tablespoon. And if you are using these, you want to make a nice rounded, full tablespoon. And if you shape it a little bit on the spoon and cut off the bottom, it's a lot easier to make a more consistent scoop. So, just something like that. Pull it off and round it into an actual ball instead of an egg shape. And you would just do the same for the whole tray. for the scoop, it's already rounded deep. So this one you would flatten off the top of the spoon instead of doing a rounded spoon. And then just use its nice little clicker handle to pop it out of your spoon. And again, you'll fill the whole tray with whichever kind you're doing. Full tray is about 12 for a regular household pan. You don't really want to be exceeding this because then when they bake, they will spread out and become one gigantic cookie. So 12 is a good number to fill your tray with. As for this scoop, I did mention I don't want to show any super costly tools. I think I bought mine probably 10 years ago, so it might have gone up slightly, but this was about $15 when I bought it. And I think that's pretty reasonable if you plan to bake a lot. If you're only doing them for Christmas time or like the holiday season, the tablespoon is fine, especially with the family. You can all grab a spoon. But if you plan to bake a lot, like once a month you're making cookies, this scoop will save you a lot of time. So the purple scoop is the one I use for cookies. The different colored handles do indicate different sizes of scoops. I used the yellow one for cupcakes and the purple one for cookies, and that's the only two colors that I have for household, but there are probably like 5 or 6 different sizes. So once we do finish filling this tray, I'm going to fill a second one, but I'm going to fast forward that scooping. And basically I want to just show you that I'm going to flatten the next tray. The way your dough goes into the oven can really affect the finished cookie product. If you have a rounded dough ball going in, it doesn't spread out as far, and it tends to cook with a more doughy center. It's a softer cookie. Versus if you flatten it, it can bake more evenly through, and it gets a bit of a crunch to your cookie. If you want to exaggerate that even more, in the rounded version, you can chill the dough before you put it in to make a really soft, gooey, centered, underbaked center cookie. Okay, so we've got our 2 trays here now. And this is the rounded one, as I said. It's the scoop without any touching. And we're going to flatten this tray just with the palm of our hand. If you're worried about it sticking to your hand, you're flattening a lot of them, just grab a piece of parchment paper and use that to flatten it. And I'm just going to pick these up here and show you the difference pre-bake, and I'll show you post-bake as well. So these are going to go into the oven for 8 to 10 minutes. Again, you will have to start to learn your oven to know the variations here. If it's hot or cold, your oven, it might take more or less time or a slight adjustment on the temperature. You'll learn that as you bake more. And so I'm also going to cut past this process and just show you our finished cookies here. Ta-da! And these are on a cooling rack. I'm going to leave them out for 10 minutes, then grab my second tray and cool those. So I can show you the difference between the rounded and the flattened cookies. So you can see one is a little higher, but it really shows if I put it into the palm of my hand, the spread of the cookie, you can tell. So the smaller one is just a doughy center, he's raised, and the other one is a little bit crunchier, he's spread out more and fully baked through. And that's it. We did it, everybody. You've completed your first cookies. Baking skill up for everyone. As I said, I do hope to do a few more videos. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching. Have a great day.